Okay, so hello everyone. I'm recording this video for the purpose of my first task which I did in my internship at the Sparks Foundation. So talking on towards this first task over here is to predict the percentage of student based on the number of study hours on on the Jupyter notebook with Python. So talking on the first thing, then the first step which we do over here usually is we import libraries. We import NumPy, we import pandas, we import matplotlib, and then moving on, I extracted data from the link, and then I read the data through here, through this link, and then for description purposes, I used the head function in order to look on the data. So you can see there are two variables over here, the number of hours in which the student studies and the number of score which the student gains. So looking on further into the data, I used the describe function, which actually tells me the characteristics of our data. It's in stats, its count, its mean, its standard deviation, its minimum and maximum values, and a little bit more into the data, which actually helps us to look into the data is I have used info function over here, which tells me the number of null variables and non-null variables, so which is described over here. Then finally on to step 3, which actually tells us the extracting, how should we extract the feature and the dependent variable from the data set. So firstly we would allocate the x variables and the y variables using the ilog function, and then we would print it. So you can see over here we have defined x variables as, which I have already shown over here. We are predicting the percentage of student based on the number of study hours. So x variable would be hours and y variable would be scores. So looking on towards the x and y variables, we have printed it, and then in the step 4 we would plot this data. So talking on towards step 4, you see I have plotted over here a scatter plot, which would give me an example of, and which would tell me what is the relationship between hours and the hours and the percentage score and the hours studied. So you can see that the percentage score and the hour studies usually have a linear relationship. As hours increase, the percentage score also increases. So with this graph, we are able to determine the fact that as much as a student increases its study hours, the percentage score also increases. So talking on towards further analysis, I actually splitted the data into train and test data. So over here we can see with this sklearn model selection, I import in train test data split, and I splitted the data, and the size which I have taken over here is 0.1, and I have printed the train and test data of x and y variables respectively over here. So finally loading the linear regression function from sklinear, I have applied the linear regression function onto the x train and y train data. So and then I have also plotted the x train and y trains scat line plot. So you can see over here it also shows the scatter dots as well as the line, which indicates that there is a linear relationship in the training data as well. So, and looking on towards the testing data, I have also performed a linear analysis on the testing data. So coming on towards comparison between the actual and the predicted value, I have predicted the value using 9.25 number of hours, since the maximum number of hours which went over here was around 9.25. So I have taken 9.25 and I have predicted it accordingly, and then I have compared the actual data with the predicted data through this function of data frame. And then in the last step, I have imported metrics from sklearn, and I have used the mean square error function in order to look how much my data is uh, squared from the mean. So its value is 5.3, which is quite less. So we are moving on to the right track. And finally, I have printed the R score value. This R score value tells how much of variation in my Y data is described through the X data in the testing uh, testing limit. So it is 0.92, which is quite much. So this shows that 92% of variation, it means that if 92% or if x variable increases by 92%, so the it is likely that y variable, which is the percentage of student score, would actually increase as well. So this was my first task. Thank you so much for listening.